Baylor football has a maniac, and he's setting the tone this spring. And I guarantee it's not who you think it is.
You are Locked On Baylor, your daily podcast on the Baylor Bears. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello there, Bears fans. Welcome to another episode of Locked On Baylor, brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. I'm your host, Cam Stewart of ESPN Central Texas and the Cam Show on YouTube. I appreciate you guys making it part of your daily routine because here at the Locked On Podcast Network, we are your team every day. And on today's episode, we're going to look at who is that surprise leader, that maniac for Baylor football here in spring camp, plus some additions to Baylor football, but it's on the staff, the back room, new GM, new assistant GM. We'll tell you all about them and what exactly that means. Plus, let's take a look at the targets for Scott Drew in the portal. Not the ones we think, but the ones that have already apparently received interest from Baylor. All that and more coming up on this episode of Locked On Baylor, starting with spring football, because that's what it's one of two seasons in Texas, either football season or it's spring football season. And it's fitting that that happens, you know, the days after the NCAA tournament, after Baylor gets knocked out of the NCAA tournament, and the week that MLB opens, bam, spring football. And we heard from Sydney Wicker on Wicker Wednesday the other day, you know, she was talking about how Dave Aranda has already compared this team to the 2021 team. And obviously this is very early doors to be doing that, right? But essentially what he was saying is the energy and the feel around the place has a lot of that feel of that 2021 team, which no one really bought into. Nobody bought into that team going into the season. Not really. No one outside of maybe you diehard listeners and you know, some of us sickos, right? But 25 comes with expectations. You know, we don't know where their preseason ranking is yet. You know, they're not the favorites to win the conference from the first set of odds from Vegas, but they're certainly up in that top echelon. And the greatest part about it is you have guys coming back, right? That's what we've talked about. Sawyer Robertson, Josh Cameron, Keaton Thomas, and Bryson Washington, and all these guys that are going to be setting the tone, the veterans on this team. But sometimes it's not just those guys. In fact, when asked about it, Dave Aranda, I mean, he wasn't asked to name names. Dave Aranda came up with an interesting name for the guy who's setting the tone for Baylor in the early days of spring football.
This team loves football and just the time that they put into it. You know, I think Edward Griffin is a great example. I mean, he's a maniac with ball. He's a maniac. He's up there all the time and wants to get better. Sawyer's up there all the time, wants to get better. And you just got guys that are just way investing, and it shows up when you start playing.
Edward Griffin, friend of the program, former Locked On Baylor guest, Edward Griffin, 4-star quarterback from Coppell High, well on his way to solidifying his place as the second greatest quarterback in Baylor history with the last name Griffin, which would, of course, put him probably second all time if he got that close to RG3. But Edward Griffin is the one that's setting the tone. Now, that probably surprised you guys. And those of you who watch every day and saw Edward on our show last year, it probably surprises you too. Because while a very talented player, he came on the show, you know, he was very, very demure, right? He was a very well, you know, polite young man who was talking very candidly, but it didn't seem like one that you were like, yeah, that guy's going to be bashing a football helmet off his head in the first week of spring football. But Dave's like, I can't, all he talks about is football, man. The guy is just so jacked up. And honestly, that kind of fires me up a little bit for two reasons. The first one is, well, really three reasons. The third one is how talented this quarterback room is, which we're going to talk about next week. But the two main reasons that it fires me up is, first off, this is an important freshman class. It's really important. And it is a class which, once again, we have to kind of think this way. It's a class that could keep Dave Aranda in Waco. Like, especially if this is just a fine year, not a great year, not a bad year. Like if it's another 8-4, 8-5, you're okay with that for the most part as a Baylor fan, but you're looking at Dave Aranda and his record, and at that point he would be like 4 games over 500. You'd have to say, well, this class of kids you brought in the class of 24, class 25, they better be pretty freaking good. All right, because we're kind of hitching our wagon to this. And to know that they are bought in from the beginning and are not, scared of the moment of spring football, right? Are not shuddering at the fact that they have to be with all these upperclassmen. That's a good start. And again, they didn't ask, "Hey, Dave, how's Edward Griffin doing in practice?" He said, "Edward Griffin, man, that's the guy bringing the tone." And the second part that makes me fired up is that it's Edward Griffin. The fact that it's a freshman quarterback that they, got out of high school as a 4-star guy. It was a 3-star when they got the commitment from him. Because you look at the guys who have played, the 2 guys ahead of him are both portal guys, right? Sawyer Robertson, great pickup in the portal. Walker White, we think is going to be a great pickup in the portal. And so much is made of that in college football these days. And I know there were some Baylor fans who thought this too. It's great that Baylor got Walker White. He's a nice player, but Edward Griffin's going to leave now, or Nate Bennett's going to leave now. And I get it. Like, that's how we think. But and I probably had a thought like that of like, oh man, I wonder what Edward Griffin thinks about this, because he got some interest late on in his senior year for sure. But here he is, first week of football in a Baylor uniform, and he's the one that's impressing the coaches and getting fired up. Like, that in turn fires us up, fires me up. And I don't want to talk too much about it because it's a big segment next week to talk about this quarterback room, but it's in as good a position as it's been in a long time at Baylor, especially if Edward Griffin is bought in and wants to play for this team, and wants to play for these coaches. And it sounds like he absolutely does, right? But quarterback in Baylor's offense in total is in a great position. And you got to kind of take these things at face value. Yeah, okay, the energy's great. That doesn't mean we're going to have a great football team. But when it's some of those young guys that are excited to come here, and Edward Griffin and Red Armstrong are 2 guys we had on the show who both echoed the same thing of, we want to be the class that really brings this thing back to where it needs to be. They were not turned off by 3-9 in 2023. They said, we want to be a part of this. We want to be a class that comes in with a chip on its shoulder. And, we've got these group chats and everything. And we want to show that Baylor should be back up, to a Big 12 contender, a potential Big 12 champion, all that kind of stuff. In fact, I think Rhett said just firmly, we're going to win the Big 12 championship. Okay. Love that. And the fact that these guys are bought in and are a part of it, that they did not decommit after things started to go well, and they brought in guys out of the transfer portal, that's a strong sign for Baylor and this class and this group. And also, Baylor's getting stronger in the front office, which still seems interesting to say about college sports, but they have moved some guys around in the back room that are hugely important to Dave Aranda's future and to Baylor football's future. We'll talk about who those guys are. We'll talk about it next on Locked On Baylor. But first, a word from our friends over at Nissan. We're all about the stats. Numbers don't lie. And when it comes to the all-new Nissan Armada Pro 4X, the numbers are on an MVP level. With the ability to tow up to 8,500 pounds, it can quite literally carry the whole team, plus the gear, wherever you need to go. It's powered by a twin-turbo V6 engine, delivering the strength and performance to handle highways, back roads, and everything in between. And with room for up to 8 people, the Armada Pro 4X is built for big crews, big adventures, and even bigger memories. Whether you're exploring off-road trails or rolling up to the arena, the Armada Pro 4X brings power, versatility, and style wherever you go. So take your adventures to new heights in the all-new Nissan Armada Pro 4X. Learn more at nissanusa.com. Today's episode is also brought to you by one of our longtime friends over at FanDuel. You might know it as America's #1 sports book. Well, the big dance is here, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's 200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories and even who's cutting down the nets. Okay, with tournament games happening all the time at this point. We're back in it from last night. We got some more today. There's always something exciting to bet on. So visit FanDuel.com and get in on the college hoops action all tourney long. So things going well on the player front for Baylor football, and we've talked about the serious momentum they've had the last, I'll give it like 10 months here, really, right? Since the start of probably last summer. The recruiting thing has been going really well. And this is all kind of coming together in the sense of, Keenan Hall comes aboard and all of a sudden the recruiting starts getting better. And we're all praising Keenan Hall. We should continue to do that. And at its peak, Keenan Hall is out there on Twitter saying, like, shout out to my guys, right? Whether it be Appleberry or Dallas Baker, and Aaron Hunt got a big shout out. And now Aaron Hunt is the first GM for Baylor football. And to solidify, to keep this thing going, not only is Aaron Hunt the GM and Keenan Hall still a huge part of it, but they've also brought in an assistant GM. I got to keep up with this thing, guys. I'm still not used to the GMs of college sports thing, but Baylor's now on top of it. Anthony Morrow, I believe is how you say it, Mauro, Morrow, is the guy they have brought in to be their assistant GM to Aaron Hunt. So first off, congrats to Aaron Hunt, because again, he's one of those names that's kind of in the background, and obviously a great tech player, has come to Baylor, which there's been a ton of, overlap in those two programs and the coaching sidelines. He comes in and has been terrific, has really helped turn this thing around. And now he gets that position. And here comes Anthony Morrow as the assistant GM, coming from the University of Georgia, which I don't know if you guys know this. They play pretty good football out there. And Kirby Smart is the best active college football coach. And Anthony Morrow was in a pretty big position there. Okay. He was the player personnel coordinator at Georgia, which anything like director of football operations is typically the big one. That's technically like the GM, like that's just a different name for it. And anything that has to do with player personnel, because that's how you kind of hid those people in the back as player personnel people when really they were running a lot of different things. So anything that has that in the title is a big part behind the scenes of that program. And so you pull a guy who is the player personnel coordinator at Georgia, albeit only for a year or two. That's a big time coach to bring in to be a part of this. So not only does Baylor didn't have a GM, they obviously had someone behind the scenes who was doing all of that. But now they say we gotta be in this game. We've got to firmly be in this game, because not everyone has a general manager. We're gonna promote Aaron to GM, and we're gonna bring in a second guy. We're gonna bring in a guy from the outside that is going to help with this whole process as well. And so as this comes across, I'm like, boy, howdy. It's time to start looking up what a college football GM actually does. I know what an NFL GM does. I know what a pro sports general manager does. I know what a Domino's Pizza general manager does. I don't know what a college football general manager does exactly. We have a good idea, right? With NIL rampant at this point, I'm guessing the GM has a huge part of that. So I read a couple of articles about it. Read this one from the New York Times. Kevin Draper wrote, and it was more of an eye towards the North Carolina and Mike Lombardi being there with Belichick. But this is how he lays it out. The job of a GM is to essentially take on most of the job of evaluating and coordinating with donor collectives that pay players, so the head coach can focus on tactics, the team, and the games. So it's not just NIL, although that's a big part of it, but where you have a scouting department in the NFL, this is now what you have at the college level. And I'm not talking about high school recruiting. I'm talking about real scouting departments, because you can go out and get plug and play starters from the transfer portal every year now. It might not be the best way to build your team, but I think Baylor's handled it pretty well the last 2 seasons. In terms of how many starters they want to go out and get from the portal, how many guys they want to retain from their high school recruitment, and all that. So that's where Anthony Morrow and Aaron Hunt fill in. Like that's where they do it. And obviously the part with coordinating with the donor collectives, that becomes really interesting. And one of the kind of reading in between the lines things I found in these hires is, we're about a month away from revenue sharing, it seems. Like that's going to pass, and that's when we're going to see it, is late April. And that $20 million cap, like how much is Baylor going to be putting towards football? I told you on the show, like, don't be surprised if there's more allocated to football this year than there was last year, based off of a down men's basketball season. Like that's not crazy, because it's people. It's the people donating the money that really have that say, right? It's pretty easy for a donor to get on the phone after he's watching a bad basketball game and saying, "Screw this! I want more of my money going towards football." And they kind of have to do it, right? Obviously, the university will set how much is going there, but if donors keep telling them they want to put more towards football and get over the hump and go to a college football playoff, they have to do that, right? And so by Baylor putting in, promoting Aaron Hunt to a job he was probably pretty much already doing, and bringing in an extra guy to help with him in a big-time role, that shows me that Baylor's going to put a lot of money into football, like most schools are going to do with the $20 million salary cap. And again, by the way, it's not everybody. Two-thirds of the college football playoff teams had a GM, 8 of 12. So they didn't all have it. And so by Baylor basically putting 2 new guys in that position, obviously one who was there with the program and has been there through Dave Aranda's entire tenure with Baylor, like that shows a serious commitment to, we are going to put a lot of money into this program and do whatever it takes to get over that hump and get back to what Baylor was during really the heyday of the Art Briles era. Because again, there's no reason that Baylor can't do that again. I know there are some fans that think that, and there's some fans of other schools who think they can never get back to that. It's tough. It's tough for a school like Baylor, and it will be tough long-term for TCU to replicate, what Gary Patterson did. But there's no reason why they can't get there, why Baylor can't get there. TCU got to a national championship game with a different coach, and this is certainly a sign of intent for that. Talk about a Baylor program that needs to get back. It's men's basketball, and they're going to need to hit the transfer portal hard. We've already heard some names being thrown around there of who would be great fits for Baylor, but who have the Bears actually reached out to? Let's go over some of those names and what it could mean for this program. Let's do it next on Locked On Baylor.
The NCAA tournament is here, and so is the Bracket Breakdown.
Locked On Podcast Network and Amazon Fire TV channels are teaming up to deliver NCAA tournament coverage like never before. Watch studio shows featuring former players and Locked On's local experts as they guide you through every upset, buzzer beater, and bracket matchup.
Stream it all for free on Amazon Fire TV channel. Search Bracket Breakdown to see it all for free.
It's your team every day.
Thank you to Isaac and Andy. They do a great job. Today's episode also brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. Daylight savings snuck up on us again. And if you're feeling that lost hour of sleep still, praying for you, 5 Hour Energy also has your back. The extra sunshine means more time for fun, but sometimes you need a little boost to power through. I know I do. Whether you're up late, staying up, watching the NCAA tournament, squeezing in around a golf after work while the sun is out, or just trying to keep up with your life and your busy day, 5-Hour Energy gives you that quick, refreshing pick-me-up whenever you need it. With longer days, I personally love getting outside, me and the dog, the lady, going out for a hike or a run or just a walk around town. Tropical Burst 5-Hour Energy is my go-to for the quick boost. So head to 5hourenergy.com to find over 15 flavors to choose from, including watermelon, blue raspberry, and peach mango. You can even build your own 12-pack or 24-pack delivered right to your door. You need one now? I kind of feel like that. Grab a 5-Hour Energy shot at your local grocery or convenience store. They're everywhere. Stock up today and stay energized with 5-Hour Energy. All right, we know. Scott Drew's got to replace basically this whole roster. And again, I trust Scott Drew to do that, to be totally honest with you. I know it's not, the portal hasn't been exactly his cooking spot versus what it used to be with the old transfer rules, but it's not like he's struck out 4 times. He's actually done fairly okay with it. And now he's got to go and find a team through the portal. So it's not just going to be who are the top 2 experienced, expensive guys I can come bring into the program. There's going to be a lot more of like a Jalen Celestine type player out of the portal than there will be Norchad Omirs this time around. And we've heard all these names thrown around. We went over some with Jackson on yesterday's show. We will have him on again to talk some transfer portal down the line. But there's only been a handful of guys that Baylor's actually reached out to. And I wanted to say, all right, let's take a look at these guys and see where they fit in. All right, so the 4 guys that I've been able to see as of the time of recording on Thursday evening that they have reached out to. First is Isaiah Elohim. He's a guard from USC. He's a freshman, okay? He didn't play very much last year, this past year that just ended. A lot of Jason Asamoah type stat line. Okay, only played 6 minutes, averaged 2 points. He was a big 4-star guy out of high school, top 20 forward in America, 6'5" guy, so he was a forward in high school, now a guard. Did not have an offer from Baylor in high school, so intrigued always to see that. We usually see more of that offer overlapping, if you want to call it that, in football, where you look at a guy they get out of the portal and you're like, oh yeah, there was some interest there in high school. You don't see it as often in basketball. 247 did this write-up, and I want to read it just because we don't have a lot of tape from him or a lot of numbers from him for last year. So they said, is Isaiah Elohim, I don't know, a physically strong and tough wing. So interesting to note there. Burst onto the national scene early because of his ability to score from the mid-range and around the rim. Shooting splits are not very great. At 6'5", he has good length, a strong body, well above average instincts for getting to the rim and scoring around defenders through contact. That sounds a little bit like VJ Edgecombe. Obviously not the same player, but just thinking of that type of player, like a 6'5" guard who can finish in traffic. He's an effective pull-up jump shooter from 17 feet. Who just needs more reps on his shot to become a more consistent shooter from deep. He has battled injuries through his high school career, but when he's available, his toughness and ability to get to the basket and penchant for putting up points in a hurry have always stood out. He's got a college-ready frame and projects as an effective wing. Again, they're putting him as a wing at the high major level. The red flag there, not that he didn't play this past year, because I'm a little bit more patient with that than a lot of fans are. But when you have an injury history already in high school, it's too bad, but it usually doesn't go away. Look up Harry Giles from back in the day. That dude was like the #1 recruit in the country, blew out his knee in high school, played a couple of games at Duke, and it just never got fully healthy again. Rob Gronkowski for football is the same thing, and he had a great career, but he was hurt every year. So these guys who start getting hurt in high school, it's usually not a good sign. Mo Odom, a junior guard from Pepperdine. It's a little bit less eligibility than Isaiah. And he's got the numbers, though, from Pepperdine. 13 points a game, 7.5 assists, 45% field goal, and 38% from 3. By the way, that's 7.5 assists per game. That's 4th in the country. So I'm very interested to see how they play this. They've already reached out to him. He theoretically only has 1 year left. Can they play a waiting game with Rob Wright here? Because obviously if Rob Wright comes back, that's your point guard. That's your dude. Like that he's got the keys to the castle. But with the, reaching out to a top 5 assist guy in America right away, right as the portal opens. Maybe that is a peek into the mind of how the Baylor staffers are thinking about Rob Wright's eligibility for next year. I hope that's not the case, but that's what sticks out to me. Also has offers from Kansas, St. John's, and Ole Miss. So some pretty good competition there. The last two are very intriguing for two different reasons. Cooper Schwieger, I believe is how it's pronounced, the sophomore forward from Valpo. Okay, had a pretty good year for Valparaiso last year, 16 and 8 per game on 49% shooting. He's like 6'10". Okay, so he's a big kid, sophomore forward. He was a three-point shooter out of high school. That number dipped down in 2025. His freshman year shot 36% from three, and this year he only shot 30% on the same amount of attempts, right at about 3 per game. So he used to make 1.5 of them, but now he makes 1 of them. And so actually, I mean, it would be like 1.25, right? And now he makes less than 1 of them per game. He also can be a deterrent at the rim. He averages a couple of blocks per game. And you watch the kid's tape, like he can put it on the floor. Like he can handle the ball. He can pass it a little bit. His interior passing actually looks pretty good. He's got like good court vision for a guy who still plays most of his game down low. And look, I mean, if you're talking to a Coach Drew and you played at Valpo, how can you say no? How can you say no to that? Like those guys can just talk Valpo all the time. Homer Drew's probably FaceTiming him right now, talking about how great Baylor is. So Cooper Schwieger, that's an interesting one. He brings kind of a something that Baylor hasn't really had. You know, Jalen Bridges was a good outside shooter at 6'9" and a forward, right? He was a very good outside shooter by the end. But this is a guy who can play a little bit more of a wing, a little bit inside out, but mostly inside, with good passing ability. And I just think of like a pick and roll game of him and Marino Dubravcic, you know, both guys who are pretty tall, you know, 6'10" and basically 7 feet, but with very different skill sets and what that could look like. Last one I want to look at, Adrian Woolley, okay, from Kennesaw State. Another freshman, so plenty of term there, right? Potentially 3 years. Guard, again, 6'4", 6'5". Adrian Woolley from Kennesaw State, 19 points a game this year. 19 points, 4 assists, and 5 rebounds a game. First team All-Conference USA. And boy, Baylor's not the only one interested in him, if you can believe that. He was one of the best players in Conference USA last year. I mean, one of the best mid-major players in the entire country last year with those 19 points a game. Now he has offers out of the portal, allegedly, from Kansas, Auburn, Houston, Florida, and Alabama. So Kansas, 3 number 1 seeds right now, and a number 2 seed that just went to the Final Four in Alabama. And oh, by the way, I think this is worth mentioning. Adrian Woolley's from Tuscaloosa. Yeah. He actually played at a high school called Paul W. Bryant High School. This is not me being negative, people. I'm just trying to help you out. Please don't get your hopes up for Adrian Woolley, okay? Because Alabama is having a much better year than Baylor has. They just went to the Final Four. They've got a dynamite coach and a really fun play style. They're pretty damn good. And this kid, being one of the best guards in the transfer portal, literally went to a high school named after Bear Bryant, okay? He's probably going to Alabama. But I like Cooper Schwieger. I really do. I like his tape, man. And Mo Odom, if you're not going to get Rob Wright, that's a good guy to bring in. And those are just the guys that we've heard that Baylor's reached out to. We've got Obi from Wyoming, who was 100% crystal ball to Baylor, but we still don't have word on that. It's weird that we still don't have anything at the time of recording of this at 6:30 on Thursday night, that we don't have anything there. You know, we talked about Magoon Guath from San Diego State. That would be a great fit. And there's all these other guys that would be great fits for Baylor, and they probably just haven't reached out yet because they're going to need to reach out to a lot of guys. But those are the 4 that we have heard from major outlets that they have talked to. Let me know who you want them to get out of the portal. Let me know in the comments below. Let me know what you're looking for in spring football, how you feel about the additions to the staff. Do tell me in the comments section below on YouTube, or you can tweet at us at Locked On Baylor. And I want to thank you for making it your first listen today and every day. And a favor to you, for me, to you, is to like the video, subscribe to the channel. We're trying to get to 4,000 subscribers by the start of football season, and we're doing pretty well with it so far. Thank you guys again for making it your first listen today and every day. Have a good weekend, and we will see you later on your favorite show, Locked On Baylor.